profound and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. This morning, Annette will be giving the talk.
Good morning. I am here. For those who don't know me, my name is Annette. My Buddhist name is Jo-A. I'm a priest here at Stone Creek, and I've chosen to utilize my name from birth. I can be referred to as she, her, Ms., mom, grandma, all of the above. So good to be with you here today. I'd actually prefer it to be by radio. These visuals are a lot to take in for a first time. So if you're uncomfortable, please close your eyes and imagine yourself listening to the radio. So this is my first time as a Zoom speaker. And it never ceases to amaze me that I would be in a position of speaking of the Dharma. I'll do my best. When Myozen gave his recent talk, it fell on Thanksgiving week, and he spoke beautifully of gratitude. Lucky him, I thought, a serendipitous and poetic topic. So here I am, being asked to talk in the season of Christmas and New Year's. What is Christmas to a Buddhist? What is a New Year? For me, Christmas is a passing scent of fur, or perhaps catching a glimpse of colored lights against a night background. It is primarily a memory of living in magic, the questioning mind not yet awake to the laws of gravity, time, or dense matter. Jolly old men could easily drift down an impassable chimney, and every being throughout the world could be visited in a single night. I lived my first 7 years separate from the constrictions of mind. Christmas was when I was encouraged in desire. What one thing did I most want and be guaranteed of receiving? The tides turned the year Santa failed me. I had asked for a pogo stick. I pictured myself bouncing across the backyard, proving my agility and being the envy of my siblings. But Santa was out of pogo sticks that year and chose instead a ballerina doll. A beauty of a doll, no doubt, with its bendable joints and its pink rubber shoes. But I was not a doll person. Santa didn't know that about me. If Santa couldn't discern my one desire, who could? It didn't help that Christmas morning was followed by a Christmas afternoon when visiting cousins broke the code of silence and dispelled me of the notion of Santa. I had no choice than to accept my view of the world had irrevocably changed. Feeling the full weight of disappointment, I set out at the age of 7 to modify my desires. I then needed to gift the mystery and the magic to my younger siblings. It was at that point that the gift of receiving shifted to the gift of giving. I list this under my Waking Up to Christmas story. And I'll now speak on waking up to a new year. I have a friend who loves to set aside a day in deep winter to review the past year and set goals for the new, beginning on January 1st. As we know, there's a conventional image of an old man or woman ringing out the old year and a fat and hopeful baby ushering in the new. This past year, 2020, began a new decade. I liked the look of 2020. It was easier to say than 2018 or 2019. I had survived the teens and held hope for positive change come fall. The news out of China wasn't great, but oceans and miles separated us. This was 2020, for goodness sake. We are a developed, experienced, educated world. Wuhan may be in lockdown, Italy too. A person coughing in San Jose. Alarmists and physicians are on alert. Our social and economic world, as we have known it, dramatically slows down. Not so bad for the retirees and the children who might appreciate a few days off school. But then the world, as we have known it, grinds to a halt. No business as usual. No end in sight. I had studied in anthropology classes about civilizations that outgrew their competency and sustainability. They developed in population and intricacy to a point where conditions could no longer sustain them. I had wondered if we of the 21st century would recognize when we were nearing the brink, or how we or I would react to it. I had learned early on to limit my desires. I could learn to live with less travel, less variety of experience, less expectation of the future. And I could sometimes sit still in the midst of not knowing how much more time I had to reside on this earth. There's a Taoist story of an old farmer who worked his crops for many years. One day, his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. Maybe, the farmer replied. The next morning, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. How wonderful, the neighbors exclaimed. Maybe, replied the old man. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors came again to offer their sympathy on his misfortune. Maybe, answered the farmer. The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. Maybe, said the farmer. Shisho spoke recently of trusting in courageous presence, not that something will happen or needs to happen. What is courageous presence for you? What is courageous presence for me? We have been given a year to test our mettle, to test our courage, our resolution, our spirit, our tenacity. These aren't simply words that seemed appropriate to citizens of the London Blitz. We can only be with what is happening if we are not denying or avoiding. We live in an interconnected universe. That which arises in Wuhan arises in our world, affects our world, is our world. What arises may not strike our daughter or father or uncle this time, but we need to be prepared for our mothers and our sons and our own little selves to be affected. Shunryu Suzuki Roshi is known to have said, "When my master and I were walking in the rain, he would say, 'Do not walk so fast. The rain is everywhere.' There is no outwalking the rain. There is no outwalking the political climate. There is no outwalking 2020. It will be with us for the rest of our lives and the lives of all born and not yet born. We can attempt to protect ourselves through education and can make choices based on what we learn. I find myself waking in the night. My room is quiet. There are no apparent threats. Yet old companion anxiety is awake with me. I turn to my mantra, this very place is the Buddha land, this very body the Buddha. I try to own this at 3 a.m. in the morning. This sleepless mind, this political climate, this aching shoulder, this questioning mind. This very place is the Buddha land, this very body the Buddha. There is no other land, no other body. I know from experience that it helps to turn on a light, shift my body, sit zazen, breathe. Yet sometimes that is more effort than I want to make. I want sleep to overtake me. I want to be unconscious a little longer. But there is no time for that. The old man and the old woman are wringing out the old and making way for the new. As I breathe, I take my place in the Buddha land, the land that holds so many unknowns, a land that tests our courage and resolution, our spirit, our tenacity. We cannot go back to sleep. There is so much that needs our attention in the coming days. Now, I always smile when I think of Jisho, speaking of Katagiri Roshi, greeting a group of invited donors with the words, "We are all going to die." I know I too tend toward the bleak, but I don't want to leave you with only that side of the equation. I want to allow for the light, for joy, for the freshness of a child. Anyone who has spoken to me in the past 5 months knows that I am besotted by the new addition to our family. A yellow lab we have named Bryn. For the sake of this talk, I will refer to her as our Christmas pup, not our Corona pup. She wakes early, runs like the wind, dances with abandon in the Russian River, and wants nothing more than to please when it pleases her. She has me out of doors seeing the sunrise and the moon in the sky through the redwoods. It is reported that people have utilized this time of seclusion to take in a pup or a kitten, such that there are wait lists well into the next year. There is a rumor in pod circles that the pets of the world arranged for this virus. in order to keep their family closer to hand and home. Can you imagine the fresh mind of a 9-week-old pup? Different from a human baby, this pup knows no boundaries, yet is totally mobile. If we put her on the ground, she runs in any direction, following her bliss. In order for her to be safe and to find her place in our family, we have had to introduce constraints. It's called training, potty training, crate training, leash training. It's called good manners, being aware of others, living in harmony with others. But it doesn't come easy, living with constraints or implementing constraints. There is new life arising in this little being as there is new life arising in our being. There is freedom and there are constraints. And there can be freedom experienced within the constraints. There is freedom and sensitivity that arises in recognizing and letting go of desires. The desire for things to be other than they are. There's a wholeness that exists in the space of letting go. I wish for you the freedom of a deep breath, the freedom of waking up in your own home, the newness of a sunrise, and the confirmation of your place in the universe as you stand beneath the night sky. I wish you the experience of simple joys in the unfolding days. And I was thinking we could use this time, my talk is brief. We could use this time to perhaps bring forth an experience that we've had in the past year. Something within the constraints that's surprised you. Something within the constraints that's allowed you into the mystery, into the magic, into something only the simplifying of our life has been able to open us to. And I know there's much else that our minds can carry us on to, but this time to look at each other, to touch into our hearts, to touch in as we review. I mentioned the friend who likes to review the past year and consider the new, and that's not something I'm always comfortable with. I'd rather just myself say, okay, let's just get into it. I'll take the next day as it comes. This is a time when we can reflect. As I say, there may be something within each of us that surprised us. That the quiet and the spaciousness and the lack of activity and schedule has surprised us and opened to us. And I would consider that a gift, if that's something each one of us or whoever would want to share. So if I'll put this on, I don't have a gallery view yet. Now I have a gallery view. And our method of clicking off our mute button, I'm not quite sure how that works. I mean, Charlie, maybe you can oversee this. but I would love to hear from any and all.
Annette? Hi, it's
Yes.
Holly. It's Holly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've talked to you personally about how like before this all started happening, we didn't know our next door neighbors. And because school, wasn't being held anymore and all this sort of thing, we have come to know them. And so instead of having these strangers in our neighborhood, now we have our next door neighbors and their two kids that are like, 4 and 6 or 3 and 6.
4 and 7.
And now they call us Auntie Holly and Uncle Richard. And I don't think this would have happened if we hadn't been confined in the, everybody in the neighborhood hadn't been confined that way. So it's been a tremendous gift.
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk.
Yeah. Good. Kirby, are you trying to talk?
Thank you, Annette. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
unmuted, aren't I?
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
are.
Thank you for your lovely talk, and it's wonderful to see you.
You too.
I love the addition about the Christmas pup, of course.
Oh, of course.
Through this pandemic, it's been very fascinating to me, the amount of time that I've been able to have with some very, very dear people that have been clients of mine for many years. I've known them through their travel. I take care of their pets. So obviously when I arrive, they leave. So as close as I've been to their pets, and they're wonderful people, they're generally not home. So it's been very interesting getting to know these people very, very close. And unfortunately, 2 of these women have both lost their husbands, both of heart attacks and both very suddenly. So it's been quite a shock since March to present. And I'm just very, very grateful that I've been able to be there for them.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful friendship we've formed and been able to have. And I don't think if it wasn't for this time of just total downtime, that we wouldn't have gotten this close and been able to have this time to just share. And so as sad as it's been in many regards, I'm meeting one of them after your talk, and it's just, I'm just so happy I can be there for both of them and through this very difficult time. But I don't think I would have been able to have all this time if it wasn't for this pandemic. So it's been a very interesting 10 months.
Yes. Yeah. And I know, Kirby, I mean, you've been available to them to allow them to lead their lives. And now you're able just to accompany them in their life.
Exactly. And it's fascinating, when you know someone 13 years, but how well do you know them? And so it's been very, very interesting getting to really know the core of someone and to the heart of them. And it's been wonderful.
That is. And I take this time to acknowledge, I think of you and your spirit. You have gravitated towards pets. Haven't been a pet person. I didn't give a lot of thought to having a pet. Some people know how, and I have to say, my sister would say, I had asked my sister who has pets and say, Ralph and I were just fine doing what we were doing. And I would say, why would you have so many pets? And she said, oh, companionship. I'm there. Okay. Well, it's certainly more than companionship. And it's just fun to see what it is to open our heart to another little spirit life. And
absolutely. And that unconditional love they give, though, but a puppy is a lot of work in that. Good for you. Good for you. It's
Let's share that. We'll share that with the whole group here.
Right. It's tough.
Yeah, it's funny. So what my nephew was saying, I'm not going to just make this all about my family, but my nephew, who's only in his 30s, his dog died recently, and their 15 or 16-year-old dog, and his partner wants to get a pup, and he wants to get an old dog.
You're right.
I can see. Okay, yeah. So
Right.
anyway,
I understand that.
good
Thank
to
you.
see you.
Nice to see you.
And I'm not seeing everybody here. So if you are out of my screen range, just turn on your microphone and speak up.
I was taking a class, I think it was in June or July, through the Center for Spiritual Living, and it met 4 times, and they had breakout rooms where 2 of us would be in a room. So I was in a breakout room with a woman that I enjoyed being with, and the last time the class met, I chatted with her, would she like to meet again? And so we have been meeting twice a week since then, getting close, getting takeout dinners, and it's been really, great in this time of isolation and nothing happening to have some closeness. So I'm grateful for that. And she's a healer, and she's been doing some great healing on me. So, and I'm just amazed at her generosity to me. So it's been a real highlight of this time for me.
Good.
Thank you.
Lovely to know, Thomas. Roberta? We can't hear you, Roberta.
Can
There
you
we
hear
go.
me now?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. I enjoyed your talk. I related to the story of the farmer where the different occurrences became relevant. Sometimes things were good, sometimes things weren't good, but a change was inevitable. A change would come and make a difference. And I see that in my life, that one day it's like this, another day it's like that. And that is particularly true with my health recently because I have respiratory issues. But I am also grateful to know I was able to complete my book. I'm going to show everybody my book, Lost Angels Coming Home. And
Mhm.
this was a big project, and I was not doing what I needed to do with it. And I found through this time meeting a neighbor who lives in the same unit here at Burbank that I do, the same building, that she actually is an editor, and she offered to edit my book. And I was able to really enlarge this book and make it, oh, so much better. Thank you. I have a girlfriend for many years who a year and a half ago had a really serious stroke, and she's a major character or person in my book. It's a memoir and fictionalized story combined. And so I tell many stories about our connection relationship over the decades from the 60s on. And she was able to read my book and loved it. And so it has offered for her a place to reconnect with these very special memories and times in her life and my life. And I'm so grateful that I was able to make the book resonate in such a way that she could relate to it. And that was a gift. and I think sometimes things come through us, we really don't know when you write a book where that's totally going to go. And I appreciate the muse that helped me and inspired me. And I also want to say I'm so grateful for Stone Creek Zen Center for having the Zoom connection, because it has really made a difference in my practice. And and connection. Blessings. Thank you, Annette.
That sounds lovely. Roberta, I wonder, I'm not sure how to do the chat business, but I sound like an aged person, but if perhaps you could put it somehow into the chat, could go the name of your book. And,
Well, thank you. Thank you. I don't really know how to do that. I'm sorry. I don't, but I think I'm going to put it in the store. I need to get in contact with Jude. I think that way people can see it and
that's
yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah. So
Fine.
does have a spiritual, and my practice background is interwoven throughout the book, and how that sustained me at really difficult times.
Good.
So yeah.
Can you just say the name of it again? I'll put it in the chat.
Oh,
Something
thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's Lost Angels Coming Home.
Put that in.
And it's on Amazon, and I got some good reviews. So I was very excited that people like it. And it is a memoir from the time I lived in St. Helena as a child
We're
to
coming.
the present time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you.
I have a couple. Annette, it's Doja.
Yes,
I was really just appreciating the invitation to reflect on the year and to reflect on what was beneficial, amidst all the disorientation and pain and loss. And the thing that really leapt into my mind was in the springtime. So it must have been like in April. So March was when things started closing down, and then April it was like, okay, this is really going to last a while. And the vividness of the apple blossoms in our backyard. There's these really neglected apple trees that the previous owner just planted underneath a redwood. Like, it's like the worst place. but every day, and the vividness of our physical life in our yard. And our son and I would go every morning to begin school. We'd go out there and we would do this loop around our yard, and the sweetness of that, like, it was like, in a standard car when you shift into low gear and it's like, that's what I felt like the spring was like everything had been rolling and then it slowed down so much. And then suddenly there was all this like sensation, like color and sound and smell and apple blossoms and bees. And I was just there with our son, who was 8 at the time, like just noticing all of it. And realizing how that's always been there and not so available. Because and then did I freeze?
you just broke up a little bit. But.
And then so that's like on the personal level, and then on the communal level, there's been a number of children in my field who have died, not from COVID, from other circumstances, and in some ways that same thing is there, where there's enough time and space and attunement to really feel how impactful their deaths are and to grieve them really more fully. And then on the national level, I think it's that same thing that I felt around the response to the deaths, like of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, when like, I don't know what all the conditions are, but the extent to which, because people's lives were a little bit slower, because we were a little bit attuned, that there was a finally appropriate response to that kind of tragic or to the ongoing violence of, not that it's stopped, but just appreciating that going into lower gear, almost like a more true fullness of our human experiences and feeling,
Yes.
So that's what I feel gratitude for.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's so many impressions and schedules and activities that we we move to the next, to the next, to the next. And here there's just been unquestionably lots. I mean, time is time, but a settled time, an open time, a time where we have no choice but to sit with what we've just experienced. And yeah, that can only, I think, benefit us and our ability to meet each other and meet the world as it continues. Yeah. And it allows for things to come in like the hummingbirds. Oh my God. I mean, unless you're sitting still, the hummingbirds visit. I mean, they come and they check me out but I wouldn't know that unless I was sitting still. It's lovely. It's a gift.
Annette?
Yes. Hi, Barry.
I wanted to thank you for your talk. I just really, I could feel your heart in your talk. It was so beautiful. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And a moment I will share is in September, Michelle, my wife, and I went down to see her parents, who both have dementia, and moved them from the facility where they were to a new assisted living facility. But we first took them to a very nice place in Santa Barbara, a home that was like right on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. And they had been in lockdown for about 4 months at that point. And Rita, Michelle's mom, who is not quite so far gone down the road of the disease, you could tell it was really taking a toll on her. She was locked up with a person who she could really not have much of a conversation with. And her mental and physical and emotional well-being were really being eroded. And we got there and we walked out onto the deck. This house had a deck that overlooked a nature preserve, and then beyond that, the ocean. And it was just like this beautiful day. And we were all just sitting on the back deck, feeling the wind and the sun and the elements. And it was so poignant, that those are things they hadn't experienced for months. And Rita curled up on one of the like kind of a sofa thing that was out there and went to sleep, and she just looked like a little girl, like contently sleeping in the sun. And it was really, I felt like, because this was not an easy trip, I was like, this moment is worth everything to me. And that obviously wouldn't have happened in many ways were it not for COVID. And then I'll just say one other thing, because it is a reflection on what Dojin just shared, which is I'm a person of privilege, and I think I'm a person who did not recognize that for a long time in my life. And this year has brought that home in many ways. Of course, George Floyd's murder and many others like it have made me more poignantly aware of that. But I also want to just say that there was just a moment in the pandemic when here I was in my beautiful house in a property where, we have walks 5 minutes away from us. I have my job. My wife has her job. I actually viscerally, for the first time in my life, recognized my privilege. It wasn't comfortable, but it also wasn't shaming. It was more like, this is the condition of my life, and it's about time I accepted it. So that's another gift that COVID has given me, although a rather difficult one.
Thank you, Barry. It's, yeah, it's often difficult times that open our eyes to who we are and what we are. And then from there, you know, what we are in relation to others and can be. Often difficult times. Yeah. Well, for each and every one of you, thank you for showing up, opening your ears, opening your hearts, and allow the fresh breeze to pass through you and the sun to warm you, and to remember how interrelated we are with all beings. Thank you.
Right, the closing verses in the chat. For great Bodhisattva vow,
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Karma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow